A near-death experience is more of an event that's given to you for your learning, and it's programmed, and it's designed for you to learn something in specific.
Mm-hmm.
And people learn different things. Typically, the person will, first of all, have a life review in which they'll see everything they ever did and experience it from everybody else's point of view, and maybe even see all the ripple effect of all those actions had on other people who are in, successive recipients of the energy of that.
Mm-hmm.
They may meet with their loved ones. They may.
This is Dale Cross, and welcome to another edition of the Soul Inspire podcast. This is the audio-video podcast that features spiritually uplifting stories from spiritually awakening souls to help inspire you on your own soul journey. On this episode, I'm delighted to welcome my guest, Dick Dingus. He was a pastor for 26 years and then a hospice chaplain for 15 years. After retirement, he started a home church model, and he lives in Virginia Beach with his 2 grandchildren and his grand dog, Blue. And it's going to be very interesting because he has studied near-death experiences in quite detail. So, Dick, let's get into it. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. All right, Dick. I'm going to kick things off with the question I ask everybody. And that is, what kind of, did you have any kind of special spiritual background growing up, or what was your background growing up?
I had no formal religious training and until high school, and it was my own choice to do that. As a youngster, I would wander the neighborhoods in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I might drop into a Sunday school class just to see what was going on, but I didn't resonate with me. And so I'd rather go outside and play. And that's what I did.
Sure.
I gravitated to a youth group when I was in grade school, but it didn't last. It was just 1 or 2 sessions. So mostly I had no religious background or training. My family had none. I would have some spiritual leanings. I love to wander in the woods and in nature, and I love to be around water. And I felt an inner sense of peace and communion with God when I did that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So what got you into the whole realms of the near, because you studied near-death experiences extensively, haven't you?
Yes. It was when I was a pastor in La Jolla, California. I was interim pastor at the Congregational Church of La Jolla.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a thrift store, and I saw the book Life, Afterlife by Raymond Moody.
Wow.
And I picked it up, and I read it, and it was so fascinating. I said to myself, this is very much like the Bible. There's some truths in here that are very much consistent with the Bible. So I need to start studying. I wanted to learn more, because the Bible is a good book, but it doesn't tell you a lot more than what's in there. And there's so much more to learn. So I started studying, and I read that book and read his sequel, simply the sequel to Life After Life. There wasn't much more written about it at that time. So I set it aside after that until I was the pastor at the St. John's United Church of Christ in Wheeling, West Virginia. And then a woman named Dorothy came up to me in a coffee hour, and she held up Betty Eddy's book, Embraced by the Light. And she said, have you read this? And I said, no. Of course, when you're a pastor, you're so busy, you don't have much time to explore other things than what you're doing as a pastor. So I read that book, and I learned that there's a whole shelf load of books written at that time about near-death experience. And so I just got into everything starting, and that was about 1995.
Mm-hmm.
And since then, I've been intent on studying it, talking about it, having support, scheduling speakers, creating support groups, and doing whatever I could to advance what we can learn from near-death experience. And that's what I want to talk about today.
Yep.
we can learn from a study of near-death experiences.
Fantastic. Now, you yourself have never had a near-death experience, is that right?
Not that I'm aware of. I may
Okay.
have had one. I had I was involved in an auto accident as a toddler, a
Mhm.
young child, not a toddler, but a young child, and I got a broken leg and I was unconscious in the hospital for a while. I may have had one at that time, but I don't have any memory of it.
Right. So, in your opinion, would you say that everybody that crosses over, like those that cross over, but then they're resuscitated or whatever, and they do come back, they're all having a near-death experience, but very few just come back with the memories of that? Would you say that everybody has them, probably, from your estimation, but a lot of people simply don't remember them? Or,
Hard to put a percentage on that. I
yeah.
know uh, in general, the picture is that a person will, uh, their physical body will be at the point of death or will be dying, though there are some people who do not experience physical death or even the threat of death who have a similar experience. It's called a near-death-like experience.
Oh.
But their consciousness will leave their body. It'll be different than an out-of-body experience. An out-of-body experience is something that people seem to uh, create or initiate on their own, and they explore wherever they want to go. On the other, on compared to a near-death experience is more of an event that's given to you for your learning, and it's programmed, and it's designed for you to learn something in specific.
Mhm.
And people learn different things. Typically, the person will first of all have a life review in which they'll see everything they ever did and experience it from everybody else's point of view, and maybe even see all the ripple effect of all those actions had on other people who are in successive recipients of the energy of that.
Mhm.
They may meet with their loved ones. They may meet with a being of light, in which they have the being of light presence when they have their life review. Then they may meet with family members who have crossed over. They may meet with a council that will evaluate their life and whether they made progress or uh, lacked in progress. Not judgmental, but just informative. This is how you've done. This is your report card
Mhm.
before the end of the term. And then they may have a choice to go back or to stay. And many are sent back and told they have to come back. And some choose to come back because they want to be there for the graduation or the birth or for a loved one or to take care of somebody who's in need. Uh, well, Rosemary Thornton had a near-death experience, and she was given the choice to come back or not. And she looked back at the hospital where she was a patient. Her body was still a patient in that hospital, and the nurse who had told her that she was going to make it was in the supply room crying because Rosemary didn't make it.
Mhm.
And Rosemary felt so bad for that nurse, she decided to come back and make it. So
Interesting.
it could be such a simple thing as that, but she decided to come back so that the nurse wouldn't feel bad. She came back.
Interesting. Wow. Very, very interesting. So how many near-death experiences would you say that you've studied? Because you wrote a book, right?
No, I didn't write a
Oh,
book,
you didn't
but
write a book.
I've written an article.
Okay.
I'd say I've probably been exposed to over 500 near-death experiences. Um, some of them told in person at meetings of Virginia Beach Friends of Ions.
Yeah.
Some told to me in interviews when I was asking a person to describe what happened to them. Uh, and some I've read in books.
Would you say that there's a common denominator between all of them?
Yes, I've written an article. It's found on the NDE research button at the website of Virginia Beach Friends of Ions. It's simply www.vbiands.org. And if you go there and click on research, NDE research, you'll see my article, which is near-death experience and what we can learn from it.
Okay,
It was
we'll put a
written back
link.
in 2011, so
Okay.
I've learned some things since then, but that's the basic structure of what people can learn from near-death experience.
Okay. And would you say that the majority of the near-death experiences that you've researched had a positive experience? Has anybody had a hellish experience? Is it, most of them are positive, yes?
Yes, I can't, no one that I interviewed had a negative experience. Nancy Evans Bush, who was part of National Ions, I think she was on their board, had a negative experience. And she was the daughter of a Methodist minister and grew up as a preacher's kid. And she had a negative experience. She could never understand it. And people are still trying to understand why it is that perhaps 10% of persons who have near-death experiences have a negative experience. But the general conclusion from everybody is we get what we need that will help us in our spiritual growth.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, because I feel like our souls have come here to expand, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously you get what you need. That makes a lot of sense.
Angie Benamor had a negative experience. She committed suicide because she didn't know a way out of a failed marriage. And she wound up in a dark place where she said the blackness was palpable. And the people who were there were languishing in lack of energy. And it was like they couldn't help themselves. And she prayed. And Jesus came outside the darkness. And he asked her if that's what she wanted for her life. And she said no. And so at that point, there was a sound such as a computer connecting with the internet. It used to happen when we connected by a telephone, that you'd have all this buzzing going on. And it was Jesus talking with the Father about Angie's predicament. And Jesus gave her the energy to help herself crawl out of that darkness and crawl back into her body.
Well, that's beautiful. So what you're saying is even the people that have had some of these darker experiences, it's like there was always some light that they could reach up to.
Yeah. When George Ritchie had his near-death experience, he was given a tour of the realms, and he went to some dark realms, and he saw the people who were languishing there. But he also, when he looked carefully, he saw angels who were in those dark realms, ready to give messages and help the people who were there. But the people had to respond. They had to want to help themselves.
So you think it's about free will?
Yes, God gave us the free will.
Right. So
God
those
doesn't
people,
violate that. We have to ask for help.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So it's like these people maybe that are experiencing this hellish situation, it almost seems more like a purification thing, or maybe their egos are being purified. That's what Michael Newton says in his book Journey of Souls, but who knows what the truth is, right? Really, until we get there.
Yes, I don't have a further light on that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
They're there, they're stuck there until they decide to change. And if they decide to change, then they can change.
So this idea of an everlasting hell, what do you make of that? That a lot of evangelical Christians talk about a punishing, jealous God.
Yes, that is a big problem for people who are stuck with the Bible as the final and only authority.
Right.
But it doesn't fit. I think the main point of the whole Bible is God is love. And Willie Nelson said it. God is love. That's the point of religion, period, he said. End of sentence. Now, if you hang your hat on that peg, how can there be a hell and God would punish people eternally? I like instead what Neil Donald Walsh wrote in Conversations with God. He said, we have unlimited freedom, we have complete freedom and unlimited potential. He said that we are all like children playing in God's backyard, and the things that we think are sins are of no consequence to God. They're just children's games.
Right. So it's more like
I discount the idea of God judging anybody to hell.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it just doesn't fit because how can you have on the one hand an all-loving God and then a God that's going to roast you in hell for all eternity? You can't, that God can't exist because you can't have that dichotomy. That's quite a dichotomy.
In a recent book I read, uh, I got this idea. There are some souls that are never going to want to respond to God. And they, I can't remember the word. It was like they're not going to be dissolved, but it's something like that. They choose disintegration rather than continuing. And I suppose that's free will too.
Or maybe it's the case that they're just that everybody will eventually get the picture and reunite with Source. That's kind of more what I feel. But they have that may take some time.
Yeah, I like to agree with you on that. I like
That
to agree with Peter, who wrote, God is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to a knowledge of the truth. But
yes.
then when you compare that, when you stand that up with free will, God still would allow people to exercise their free will not to respond. But again,
They
eternity is a long time.
There you go. They have they have all the time in the world to eventually reunite with Source. Uh, I feel like it's a matter of perspective too. I think that if people truly knew how wonderful Source is, the free will choice would be to want to choose God. But because people are in a dark place vibrationally, until they ascend the vibration, when they get to the higher vibrations, they have the vibrational access. But you're right, they still have to make the choice.
Peter described what I feel was the discarnate experience of Jesus after his crucifixion.
Mhm.
Peter says, I think it was words like this: Who is it who has ascended into heaven but he who descended into the depths after, and I think that means after his crucifixion, but before his resurrection. I think he took that light to the souls that were waiting there, and they saw it and they responded.
Yeah, that could very well be. That's yeah, because I think there's always hope, even though we have this free will. Uh, it's a matter of because our perceptions and our experiences create our choices. So we do, I almost feel like you have free will when you wake up, but do you really have, the question is, do you have free will when you're asleep? Because you're just being run on your programming and you're being run on, your life experiences. The people that are in a very dark place. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. David Hawkins.
The name is familiar, but I'm not familiar with any works that I could identify of his.
Yeah, so he created a map of consciousness, which he used kinesiology to test different vibrations at different levels. And so it looks kind of like a pyramid. I mean, you can Google images, you can type in David Hawkins map of consciousness, and you can see how most people are stuck below 250 vi 250. So below 250, you've got your guilt and your shame. Shame being the lowest possible vibration because it's the farthest away from Source's broader perspective. And when people are stuck in that survival, fight or flight, it's really they don't have free will because they are being run on they're so scared. Life is a threat and they need to survive and they feel they need to step on one another. A lot of people are in that fear and anger and lower, but then when you get to 500, when you get to 400, it's a level of the intellect, which is still limited, right? Because the true wisdom is here, not here. And then when you get into 500, you're getting into the unconditional love. There you have the free will because there you can choose to create your life in a much more beautiful way. That's what I'm finding in my own life. I can create, not that I don't dip up and down, of course, but I find that the more I hang out in the unconditional love 24/7, the more I can sustain that vibration. My life is just effortless and beautiful. I'm just so in love with life.
And how do you go about sustaining that high vibration?
There's something called a heart wall. So the heart wall is something that most folks have. And the heart wall is layers and layers of trapped emotions that form. It's almost more symbolic, but I think it's also literal that these trapped emotions, it's kind of like they dim the light, they obscure. So like everybody's already at that high point. The larger aspect of our souls is already one with source and just basking in that beauty and that love. But when we go through the trail of life, we wind up getting these trapped negative emotions and they sort of pile up. And then that causes us to live in the mind. And when we live in our ego mind, we are trying to protect ourselves from threats and we're living in the fight or flight. And so when we can clear the heart wall, then we can actually automatically drop from here into here. And when we can rest and abide with the cleaned up, that heart wall is removed, then forgiveness is automatic. It's not something you do, it's something you are. Love, joy, peace, because that is our inherent nature. That's what we really are. But it's just, it gets all covered up. And so when I work with clients, we do this thing called the emotion code, where I actually go in and help people clear this heart wall. And oh my God, I tell you, I had one guy, one of my clients wanted to do something really bad to his father because his father had been very abusive. So he said, I want my dad to pay. I want to get revenge. I said, no, you don't. Oh, yes, I do. I said, well, let's remove that heart wall. Let's remove those trapped emotions. Let's see if you still want to hurt your dad. He's like, oh, it's so difficult to not want to get revenge. I'm like, stop trying to be a better person. Let's clear the heart wall instead, because trying to be a good person is very limiting. Why don't we clear the heart wall, and then being a good person will be by default, it'll be automatic. So I cleared within 5 minutes. Of course, it takes several sessions usually to clear a heart wall, but I cleared the revenge vibration. And I said, how do you feel about your dad now? So a few minutes ago, he was like this, angry. So how do you feel now? He says, I love my dad. Could you ever hurt your dad? No. I said, this is the real you. This is who you are. But it's just all covered up. So we do have free will to a point, but we have real free will when all that stuff is gone.
Well,
Then we
thank you
can.
for sharing what you do for others. But the question was, what do you do for yourself to maintain your high vibration?
I do the same thing. I do the same thing that my clients do. I hire people, coach. I hire energy healers to work on me
Okay.
because that's the thing. You can do emotion code. Sometimes I can do emotion code on myself, but you can do emotion code on yourself, but it's limited because you can be too attached to your own stuff. So it's
Okay.
really good if I hire somebody else that would be better to hire someone else to do emotion code for me because they're not attached to my stuff.
And if
So
somebody wanted to hire you, how would they go about it?
they can just go to my website, dalecross.net, and they can go on there and they can book a one-on-one a free discovery call where it's completely free. We just talk about, okay, what direction do you want to go? Do you need more financial flow? I recently helped a person. I've helped two people in the last few weeks that were in a terrible financial situation. I said, why don't we clear the energy? The one lady, after we did a few sessions, she just got a huge divorce settlement. So she went from not being able to put gas in her tank to now having enough money to live for the next 2 years without working. So that's one example of a person where we cleared the financial blockage. And another person had a financial blockage and she lost her job. She had only 20 bucks left, I think, in her bank account. I said, let's work on that. She just got a $3,000 commission on a new job. I mean, because when you clear the heart, you're now in receiver mode. You're no longer chasing the money. The money's coming to you. because you are one with the energy of money and everything just flows in. So it's no longer about chasing anything. Everything comes.
Great
It's
explanation.
it's like effortless. Yeah, because life is meant to be joy. It's not meant to be suffering and struggle. All suffering comes from the resistance we have to whatever is happening in life, and we can clear that away.
This resonates very well with the idea of God being unconditional love. We have
Yes.
two pictures in the New Testament of God being unconditional love. One is from James, and God is the giver of every good and perfect gift. It's like God initiates the flow of every blessing to everybody.
Yes.
Uh, the other one is from Matthew chapter 5, in which Jesus says, you should be perfect like God, because God gives the rain and the sun to both the good and the evil.
There you go.
God doesn't distinguish between that.
No.
Uh, God doesn't withhold it. Unfortunately,
No.
people do. People block it, like you said. They have the emotional blocks that prevent them from getting the blessings, receiving the blessings. So when when you remove the heart block,
Yes.
then they can be back in the flow of receiving all the blessings that belong to them.
It's so beautiful. I can cry because there's nothing that sets my heart more alight than when I see the incredible results that my clients have been getting. So when I see the miracles that people get just from removing these blocks, that makes me so joyful, you know. That's
You're
why I do it.
obviously in service of spirit for humankind.
That's what I signed up for. That's what I'm doing. Yeah, because I tried living for myself, living for self, and it failed pretty spectacularly. And I'm so grateful that everything I ever did failed. Everything that I ever tried to do without God failed. But I failed forward because it helped me fall into the work I'm doing now. And I'm getting great success because there's no hidden agenda. My agenda, there is an agenda. The agenda is to see people free, like help people remember who they really are, you know, help people get back to freedom.
That's the main force for a near-death experience. People
Okay.
are changed because of a near-death experience,
Yes.
and they can, in a way, they don't. I have never used this language about removing the heart barrier, but that's what happens for them. They're reacquainted with unconditional love, and then it just, as they allow it, it permeates their life.
Absolutely. I mean, emotion code is just one of so many wonderful modalities. There are so many. I mean, emotion code is only one. There's many others. That just happens to be the one that I got trained in, the one that I got certified in. And the reason I do emotion code is because it really helped me. And I was like, oh my God, like I saw spectacular changes in my own life. I'm like, oh my God, I want to help. Now I want to help as many people as I can.
That was part of my experience. It was when I was in high school that an upperclassman by the name of Russ Becker came up to me. I didn't know him, but he had a tract in his hand, and it was on a sidewalk at MacArthur High School uh, in West Hollywood, Florida, and he said he wanted to talk to me, and he said, "Would you like to go to heaven?" And that was the part of the tract. That was on the tract. I've kept it all these years. I have it in a notebook. And I said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. He said, well, all you have to do is ask Jesus to come into your heart.
Right.
So I said, okay, I could do that. He said, you want to do it right now? And so we prayed. And he was part of Youth for Christ. And I became part of Youth for Christ.
Right.
And it was, I all of a sudden had a friendly peer group. I'd never had friendly peer groups. All the quote friends that I had they seemed to have their interests in mind, but not mine, and they were out to hurt me if they could. But
Mhm.
now I had a group of people who cared for my best interests, and not only them, but one of their families invited me to come and be part of their dinners sometimes, and I went to
Mhm.
church with one, and I had a church group family. I was
Mhm.
well accepted, and life was good. but I went to a Youth for Christ rally one time. Uh, uh, I had already started reading the Bible. It was closed to me before that, but all of a sudden the Bible was more open. I was at this Youth for Christ rally, and Jerry Burleson was on stage. He was the leader of Youth for Christ in West Hollywood, Florida, and he was singing the song, My Anchor Holds. I was sitting alone, and all of a sudden I was flooded with joy, happiness, love, greater than I'd ever experienced in my life. And it was that, I believe, was my transformational experience, my spiritually transformative experience. And the energy of that propelled me into the ministry. The energy of that, I was a sophomore in high school at the time. It was 1962. All of a sudden, my grades went up in school. I was getting all A's and B's. In the final year, I got all A's. But it was because of that. And I had friendly peers. I understood the Bible now. I could read it. I felt like I was walking in air on a cloud. I was always smiling, and I was so joyful. I'd never been so happy in my life. And it was because of that that I said, I want to go into the ministry. If this is what can happen for people like me, where I felt lonely, I felt separated, I didn't understand what the purpose of life was, I just was unhappy, I want to do it for other people. I want to help other people experience it. That's why I went into the ministry.
Right. Okay. So you and then so you have a home church, right?
Yes, after 26
Or you
years,
had.
I served in pastoral roles in the United Church of Christ. Then I tried to tell people in churches about near-death experience and the wonderful experiences of other people, but they weren't that interested. In fact, it caused a conflict, and I was always in that conflict situation, and I couldn't keep quiet about the things that I loved and I wanted to tell. So I finally resigned from the church I served. I went in to become a hospice chaplain, and I was a hospice chaplain for 15 years. And I felt I really had something important to share with people because I'd studied near-death experience. And
Yes.
so I could tell clients and their families that physical death is not the end. And people go into the light and they experience love and reunion. And so that's important for the families too, because they're not losing somebody. They're just saying temporarily, goodbye for now. We'll see you later. And in the meantime, there could be after-death communications with family members. It often happens that someone who has died will come back and communicate with somebody still living.
Yes.
And so I felt I had something to offer. I did that for 15 years. Then it was after that I resigned at a point of family needs and to take care of my grandchildren. I couldn't both work full time and take care of my grandchildren. And after about a year, I started a home church. It's a home church model. Ostensibly, I did this because there are many churches that have large buildings but dwindling congregations. And the congregation is not going to be able to financially support the upkeep of the big building. Well, then they have to sell their building. What do they do then? They can follow the model that I've created for a home church. The earliest Christians met in homes.
Right.
You don't have to have a separate building. You just have to have a place where you're safe and where people can share with one another. So that's what we do. And Strangers No More, that's the title of it.
Okay. Very good. So you said you were also you worked in the hospice for, did you say 15 years?
Yes.
So you must have, I'm curious about some of your experiences with assisting people. Well, you didn't assist them. I mean, you comforted them before they pass. Is that correct?
You have to meet everybody where they are, and you try to lead them forward. There were two main things I wanted to tell to people. The first is that life doesn't end in the physical body. And the second is that we can maintain relationships with our family. I went to one home. I had not been there before. This was my first visit, and the family had gathered, and the father a man in his 50s, I guess, was dying. He was in hospice care. And I
Mhm.
didn't know what to say to the family. So I said, well, you know, there's two things I like to share with families. And that is when we don't lose life or consciousness when we die physically. Instead, we go into the light. And the client, I'm going to call him David, he said,
Mhm.
yes, that's true. That happened to me. He hadn't told his family about it, but he was telling them now. He was affirming it now when I brought it to their attention. And he said, I had died and I went into a cloud. It was bright, but it was peaceful.
Mhm.
And so I let him talk, and his family received what he had to say. And I said, the second thing I had to say was that you can communicate with people uh, who have passed over. They come back and they can talk to us.
Mhm.
And he affirmed that was true also. I have one great story I love to tell.
Oh, great.
I went to visit with another person, and uh, he told me this story. No, it was the same person, David. He said he was in his kitchen one summer night. The main door was open, but the screen door was closed. And he looked out into the backyard through the door, and his old friend, who had died in a car accident in high school, came walking up to the door. And he said, what are you doing here?
Hmm.
He said, well, I asked God how you were doing, and he said I could come and talk to you. So they had a conversation through the screen for like 5 minutes.
Wow.
And his friend turned around and, they said goodbye, and his friend turned around and walked away. It was the most amazing thing. And here's this guy's family listening to all this for the first time. And so what a comfort it was to them. They didn't hear it from me, they heard it from him. I just prompted the questions. So that was a great visit.
Would that be called a visitation?
Yes.
Okay,
After
that's
death communication.
after death communication. Very, very
Some people can
interesting.
actually appear in their physical bodies. They appear just as they were when they were alive.
Is that usually solid or translucent?
Solid.
Just solid. That is
Worst.
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Uh, Bill, Bill, uh, the name of the book is Hello from Heaven. And the author lists 365 stories of after death communication in his
Hmm.
book.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
can't remember his last name, but if it comes to mind, I'll mention it.
Okay. I should look up that book. That sounds
Hello from
really.
Heaven.
What's it called?
Hello from Heaven.
Hello from Heaven. Okay. Maybe I can check Amazon and see if it's on there. Probably is. But that sounds interesting. When you were a hospice chaplain, did you notice? I imagine you were with a lot of people in the moments just before they passed. Am I correct?
Yes, I was there. And
And
I
did
was there at sometimes when people passed. I would sometimes go into a nursing home room and find somebody who was dead. And I'd
okay.
tell the nurse, they didn't know that the person had died. And I would pray at the bedside. Sometimes I would feel energy, but most times I didn't understand what that energy was. I just trusted that if there was an energy of the person, I might be experiencing that. It wasn't a conscious, I didn't receive any messages
Right.
during that time.
It's just something you felt. You felt the
Yeah.
presence of an energy. Yeah, the reason I wanted to ask you was I've heard a great deal of stories. For example, I've heard of Alzheimer's patients who they had Alzheimer's, but just before they're about to pass, they suddenly the light comes back in their eyes and they have full cognition and they recognize their wife and it's like they never had Alzheimer's in the first place. Do you know this kind of story?
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm familiar with those stories. I can't say it ever happened in my presence,
Okay.
but I know of many people who told me about this.
Yeah, it's almost like the full lucidity, the real heart of the person comes back just for a moment, just
Yeah.
before they pass. And then I've
And
heard
they
others.
also
Yeah,
they
go
also
ahead.
look up into the ceiling of the room and their eyes get bright and they smile. It's like they're
Yeah.
recognizing somebody's come to receive them and
Yes.
accompany them into the spiritual realm.
Did you ever have an experience where you were in a room with someone and they say to you, "There's my mom, there's my dad," or anything like that?
Yes, I did. There was a woman in a nursing home I'm just going to call her Virginia.
Okay.
And she had an enlarged liver. It was like cirrhosis. And she was experiencing some cognitive difficulties. She could not talk. And I had to devise a way to communicate with her. And so I'd say, okay, I'm going to ask you questions and you can nod your head, yes or no. And so we learned to be able to communicate like this. And I asked her some good questions, and her answers were really revealing. At one visit, she said she saw in the corner of the room a number of people up by the ceiling. Some of them she recognized, some of them she did not.
Yeah.
On another visit, she said she had a visit from Jesus, and Jesus told her that she would be with him soon. And another visit, she wasn't there anymore. She had transitioned.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it really makes the whole thing very visceral and real when you actually see people are, and of course, a lot of people would say, oh, they're just hallucinating this. I really feel that they are seeing what they're about to transition to or something. That's how I feel, that this is real. It's not a hallucination. It's
Well, the idea about hallucination is important because people who survive a near-death experience are transformed. Their
right.
lives change radically. They leave, they go into education and training to become helping persons in any one of the number of helping services.
No,
Hallucinations don't do that.
no, no, exactly. Yeah, the fact that the near-death experience is so transformational for people. And then I've talked to a number of people on this podcast, and they can remember, or I've heard of people that can remember the event 50 years ago that's still very, very clear in their mind, unlike a dream, you know?
That's right. I call that an eternal moment.
Mm,
We have time and space on earth, and then there's eternal moments. And the eternal moments are like etched into our consciousness, and they never fade.
I like that. I like that. Now, I want to ask you this. So you had the experience where you asked Christ in your life and you did, and you lived as a Christian. How has the near-death experience maybe changed the way you viewed Christianity over the years, or do you still have the same ideas of Christianity that you had back in the 60s, or has it like shaped some of your thoughts
Yes.
or
Well, it required me to rethink a lot of things. There are some things in near death experience that are not included in the Bible. In fact, the common teaching from the Bible that's taught is opposition to near death experience. For example,
Mhm.
we talked about hell already. We
Yes.
talked also the idea of God as a judge or vengeance and having anger and wrath.
Yeah.
And uh, so I came to the place where I had to make a decision. I had learned a lot from my study of near death experience, but it was different
Yep.
from what I'd learned from the Bible.
Sure.
What should I choose? Should I go back to the Bible and just forget all about near death experience? Or is what can I do to resolve this? And I set up three criteria.
Okay.
The first is God is love. The second is Christ is the Lord. And the third criterion was human responsibility. We're responsible for our own behavior. And I said, if I can find these three main elements in near death experience, then I will accept that near death experience has a better expression of the truth than my limited understanding of the Bible.
Sure.
And obviously, God is love. Every near death experiencer will say that.
Mhm.
They experience love that's beyond words. The second about Christ is the Lord, I found that. And not only did I find that Christ is the Lord, I found out much more about that. One woman said, this is not an interview, but it was a report that I read
Mhm.
in a chapter of a newsletter from one of the IONS groups. The woman was involved with drugs.
Mhm.
She was a young woman, she was homeless. She was hitchhiking. A trucker stopped and invited her for a ride. She felt sick. She asked if she could lie down in the back of the cab. He said, okay. He was driving along, but she was in the back. She said it felt like her life was rolling up within her like a window shade. And suddenly she was outside of her body.
Mm-hmm.
It was dark. She didn't know where she was. She had no idea. She was afraid. She called for her mother. Mom! Her mom didn't come. She said, anybody, I need help. Far into the distance, in the darkness, she saw a light, and the light came at her at great speed and stood next to her. It was a man. And the man, she said, who are you? And I said, I'm Jesus the Christ.
Mm-hmm.
She said, why did I suffer all those things in my childhood? He said, I gave people free will. She said, why didn't you come to help me? He said, you never asked. Until then, she asked.
Right.
And he came. Then he gave her a tour. He showed her a timeline. He said, this is the timeline for human existence. This is the beginning of the human race. This is the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the middle of the human race, there were some vertical lines, red, cutting the line, the timeline in half. He said, that's the intervention of the cross. And he showed her the cross.
Mm-hmm.
She saw his suffering. She saw people abusing him and his pain. And she said, I don't want to see that anymore. And he said, okay, but that's the intervention that I provided so that humankind could get from the beginning to the end. And he, that was just one example of Christ being the Lord. He talked about how he is the Lord. He's in charge of the world and how things are progressing. I just finished an essay on Jesus, and in which I researched all of this from the Bible point of view and comparing Edgar Cayce and what Edgar Cayce had to say about it. So anyway, in near-death experience, I found that Christ is the Lord. And the third criteria was human responsibility. Of course, when I came across life reviews, I knew that I had my answers. People are responsible for what they do. They're going to receive it back. The energy is going to come back to them. They'll have a chance to make different choices in the future. It's not condemning, it's educational, but they're responsible for it. So I made a choice. Yes, I'll go ahead. I'll accept what near-death experience has to offer. And if I come into any opposition from the Bible, I'm going to favor what's presented in near-death experience. And I'm going to do it because there's a rumor that the Bible has been edited and we're being controlled by what was added and what was deleted from the Bible. For example, the idea of reincarnation is in near-death experience, but in the Bible, we think it's been removed. Some remnants are still there.
Yeah.
The Pharisees asked, or the Sadducees asked Jesus, why was this man born blind? Was it his own sin or was it a sin of his parents? Well, how could he have sinned if he hadn't been born before or for having lived before coming into the earth? That was just one example. The other, obviously, is John the Baptist came in the spirit of Elijah.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus himself, according to Edgar Cayce, had many lifetimes on earth before his spirit came into the person we know as Jesus.
Right.
So I've been on a good course of learning from near-death experience.
Well, I'm so grateful to you that you've kept such an open mind. I think that it's people that close their minds off and say, this is the only way or something, that they're really limiting themselves to what God has to offer us. And when they say that this is only one way, I mean, you even look at Christianity, there's how many different, even the own Christians can't agree on the scriptures. There's many, many different denominations and sects. But what do you make of, okay, let me ask you this, Dick. What do you make of those that don't see Jesus when they pass over, but they meet Buddha or they meet Krishna? Would you say that Krishna, Buddha, Jesus are all emanations of the one source, being God?
I have considerable thoughts about this.
Mhm.
The first thought is Jesus came to those who would hear him,
Mhm.
but Buddha came to those who would hear him, and
Right.
Krishna came to those who would hear him.
Right.
So all of them are servants of God, come to bring us messages that will help lift us out of our negativity and to raise our vibration,
Mhm.
to know God's love. And religion tends to be restrictive and exclusive and
Yes.
to discount the truth in other religions, but they're all
Pointing.
from God. They all came at God's inspiration. And uh, in her book, Home at the Tree of Life, Dr. Eleanor Gabor, no, Elena Gabor,
Mhm.
wrote about Jesus. She
Mhm.
said he ascended to the highest level where he could have melded back with the Godhead, but he chose not to do this because he wanted to be able to return in his physical body to help people on earth who look to him for help. And
Mhm.
with him are other highly evolved souls, Gandhi, Saint Germain, Buddha, and others.
Mhm.
And this was confirmed not only by Eleanor Gabor in her regressions of her clients, but
Wow.
also by mediums who were consulted by Dr. Melvin Morse, that he wrote about in his book called An Urgent Message for Humanity, which was just published in September of this year. That Jesus is only one of many highly evolved souls sent to help humankind.
Mhm. I resonate with that. Yeah, I agree with you that the Bible itself has been quite edited. In fact, I'm studying with this guy named Michael Popovich. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's kind of I guess he was a pastor out of Colorado. He used to be with the Word of Faith Ministries, but he's not anymore. Now he has gone into the original scriptures called the pictograms or pictographs, which were Hebrew and Greek. And when you look at, once they were translated into Latin, they lost almost all of their meaning. And then they were translated again into English, they lost even more meaning. But when you look at the original scriptures, the Hebrew and the Greek kind of pictographs, you can see that every verse in the Bible is pointing to the same thing, that God is love, that there's two love covenants. The first love covenant between the man and the woman, they give life, they give birth to children. But there's also the love covenant between God and man, where he can put thoughts. Your thoughts are like a seed that can create your reality. And there's a lot of law of attraction in the original scriptures. But then once they took those out or they replaced them, it became more about morality and things and less about the love of Christ and God. But it makes sense because in order to control people, you need to use fear to control. I mean, love is not the way you can control people or get people into a religion. So,
Religion has become left brained
yes,
and it's limited to the logic of the mind. And people refer to the Bible as their only authority. And that's where their left brain operates, in the
yes,
Bible.
yes,
But I think the truth is right brained. Jesus, there is that verse in Timothy, study to show thyself approved by God, but that's only one verse.
mhm,
In the Bible, there's much more leaning toward trusting the guidance of the Spirit within, not looking to any authority outside of yourself.
right.
Jesus said
That,
that the Spirit would guide us into all truth. Paul wrote about being led by the Spirit. All who are led by the Spirit are sons and daughters of God. He
yep.
said, live by the Spirit. That talks about something, a living relationship. And so we need to trust our subconscious. We need to
Mhm.
meditate to get in touch with our intuition, to develop that, and to raise our level of consciousness. It may be recording dreams
Mhm.
and pondering them. It may be consulting other psychics and mediums so that you'll know you're on track. Uh, I had a wonderful reading for from a psychic, a medium in my area. Her name is Claire Daughtry.
Hmm.
And then she gave angel messages. And
Mhm.
one angel message to me was that I had a guide who walked with Moses in the wilderness. And
Wow.
my guide, I pictured my guide with a staff. And I found a staff. Here's the staff.
Oh, nice.
And Claire said, if I will hold a gold ball in my hand, that my guide will communicate with me. So whenever
Beautiful.
I hold my staff and my gold ball, I could sit up and I can almost feel the energy
Yeah.
coming into me.
Yeah.
So I'm suggesting to people, trust your intuition, trust that
Yeah.
something greater than your left brain can
That's
guide you.
yeah.
And God and his angels and helpers can can communicate through, over, supersede the left brain and allow you to grow spiritually in your awareness of God and love.
Beautiful. Beautifully put. I totally agree that you've got your 3D mind-based reality, and it's all about integrating the 5D based effortless reality into the 3D world, and then you can live in bliss and joy no matter what the circumstances going on in the outer world. You can stabilize peace in your life by living from the heart. And then the mind comes into submission to the heart. We still use the mind, but we use it to create. We use it to manifest, to create. We don't, that constant narrator, I should have done this, I should have done that, that goes away because we go with the flow of life and live through the heart.
Dale, I want to comment on this.
Okay, sure.
Scientists have discounted the messages that we might receive through mediums or through intuition or through the right brain.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Melvin Morse worked with his colleagues to develop an experiment in
Okay.
which the science that could provide scientific evidence for the validity of messages from mediums. And they wrote about it in that book called An Urgent Message for Humanity. And this is their experiment.
Okay.
They vetted mediums. They contacted many dozens of mediums and they vetted them. They wanted to find out who were really the most accurate. They chose those. They had a second criterion. The medium had to be able to affect the flow of electrons in a random electron generator. They had to affect it for a period of 10 minutes over a 30-minute period. And if they passed these two tests, then they could be included in the experiment. Now, in order to ensure validity for science, they had a number of questions that they wanted to ask the mediums, 4 questions especially.
Mm-hmm.
But they weren't going to ask the questions directly. They were only going to give the mediums a series of numbers. There would be 9 numbers in the series, and each series would reflect or represent one of the questions. So it'd be like, Dale, I'm going to give you 9 numbers, and I want you to answer the question that these numbers represent.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave these questions, these numbers to the mediums, and asked them to report back on the answers that they got from their guides from the other side. They consulted the other side to get the answers, but only Melvin Morse and his colleagues knew the actual questions. The mediums didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
But the mediums received the answers from the higher self, from the universal consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's all in the book. It's the evidence that we can rely on, receiving guidance from the spiritual realm, from the other side. They're all there, ready to help us. They've been there all along, inspiring people, giving ideas, telling us how we can expand in medicine and technology. We've run with the technology to create weapons of mass destruction that put us at the brink of self-extinction.
Right.
So we need to catch up We need to trust and connect with love.
I agree. That's beautiful. Thank you, Dick. Dick, you are are you the president? You are on the board of IANS. Can you talk about that?
I'm the vice president in office at Virginia Beach Friends of Ions. I have worked with this local group for perhaps 20 years. Cheryl Birch started this group back in probably 2003, and I joined her on the board 2004. And I did what I could to help recruit speakers, and eventually I was the only person who was doing this. And I recruited others who are on the board now, and I have 3 or 4 other people on the board, but I still do the main work of recruiting the speakers and organizing the meetings. I film the meetings. We make the videos available on YouTube, or I can send them by WeTransfer. And I'm the spark plug that keeps this thing going.
Okay, good. I'd like to point people to that. So what website or your website and your YouTube channel, do you want to just tell them, and then we'll make sure that we put them in the show notes underneath the video.
If people could check for Virginia Beach Friends of Ions, it's www.vbiands.org. And that's the site where my paper is on near-death experience and what we can learn from it. It's at the NDC research button.
Good.
If people want to connect with me or check in with Strangers No More, the home church model, they can contact me at my email address, which is Richard A. Dinges, DINGES, at AOL.com. Strangers No More does not have a website.
Okay.
We operate mostly by email and word of mouth, and that's enough.
Okay, great. Yeah, so people, and did you say you have a YouTube channel as well?
Our YouTube channel is for Virginia Beach Friends of Ions, and we post our videos there.
Okay, great. In case people want to check that out. Great. And we'll make sure we put these underneath on the show notes, but we'll also put them underneath your face on the display here as well. If you could,
I do record the videos of my speakers at Strangers No More, and I can send those to people individually if they're interested.
Sure, so people can just reach out and request those. Okay,
if
great.
people want to receive a weekly announcement of what our programs are, they can contact me and I'll add them to the email list.
Absolutely, great. So Dick, just to wrap things up, if there's a nugget of wisdom that you'd like to share with the world, what would it be?
Look within and connect to love.
Look within and connect to love. I like
and
that.
Express love at every opportunity.
Oh, beautiful.
See, God is love, and as whether it's in A Course in Miracles or Conversations with God, the concept is we are the children of God maturing into full Godship. And God is love. We're children learning how to do this, how to express unconditional love.
Yep.
And so we receive a continuous flow of love energy from God, and the goal is for us to spread it around. So every person we meet, and every flower we pass, and every animal that we meet, express love, appreciation, tell people how beautiful they are, and help them, love them, share your love. That's it.
Well, Dick, you are beautiful, and I appreciate you. And I appreciate you. It's an honor to have someone like you share your story, because I feel the genuineness and the sincerity of your heart. So thank you for that. You are a beautiful soul.
Thank you, Dale.
I appreciate that. So there you heard it. Whatever religion you are, there's all different paths, but they're all going to the same beautiful source of God, and that love is within you. Thank you so much, Dick. And thank you, everybody, for another edition. Thank you for joining us for another edition of the Soul Inspire podcast. See you next time. The Soul Inspire podcast is brought to you by DaleCross.net. Discover the freedom, bliss, and ecstasy within you. At DaleCross.net, I can help connect you with your soul's purpose, passion, and mission.
Your soul signed up for something great. Discover what it is with the tools I offer. Book a free one-on-one consultation now at dalecross.net and live your greatness.